So the countdown is over. It means that probably we are now live for the 5th time of this week. As you can hear, this time a special moment. We are doing it the first time during Merchant Inspiration Live on English. So we have an international guest, we could almost say. We have Christoph here. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So why are we here? What's happening right now? So we are like now, as I mentioned, on the 5th edition of this week's Merchant Inspiration Live. This week was all about how to grow basically organically and how you can grow your own online shop without spending too much marketing efforts. And we talked in the very beginning of the week about search engine optimization. We talked also a little bit about how you can actually grow your community and your brand through active community management. And today we're here to talk about email marketing in general, CRM. And there are very few people in Germany who know more than you, Christoph. I know I set the bar very high, but I'm really excited to have you here. While everybody's coming, please write anything you want, any questions. Feel always free to write anything here in the group, in the chat where you're joining. We had last time, a couple of days ago, we had some persons actually joining from a barbecue. So Friday evening, Friday afternoon, 5 p.m., sunny outside. So there are better things to do than probably hanging out in a virtual room. But I'm very appreciating that you guys are all here, and I'm sure it will be worth it. So please send greetings in the chat from wherever you join. I'm really excited to see it. We had last time also somebody from Lisbon, Portugal. We had people from Austria. We even had one person from Brazil last time joining. So I'm really curious to see. And wherever you're in Germany, also say hi in the chat. I'm really curious. So what is it about today? This is what I mentioned this week was all about everything related to organic growth. This week or today is about top trends in email marketing, customer retention. So before I start, I just wanted to highlight again, feel free to write any questions you have in here in the chat. We're doing this live, and the idea is to give you really hands-on advice and really get you with all the knowledge you need in order to bring your shop forward. So that's why, like, whatever you feel like asking, feel free to ask. Quick mentioning, who am I to talk all the time and not giving over the word to Christoph. I'm Adrian Pieksa. I'm Shopify expert at the Shopify expert agency Tante E. We basically help people to set up their online shop, but also optimize their online shop. And so we deal also a lot with those different questions of like how to grow organically, how to boost your shop further. And I'm really happy to hand over now to the man of the night, Christoph.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Adrian. Can you confirm that you see my slides and that you can hear me well?
We'll switch now over to your slides. So far, we see like your face and your name, and that you're from Get Your Guide. And I'm switching over now to the screen. Okay. And we see now your slides. Okay. There we go.
Perfect. So let's start. Thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time on Friday, 5 p.m. To listen to my short presentation. Today we're going to talk about current trends in email marketing, in customer retention, in CRM in general, and I hope it's going to be interesting. I have some interesting examples prepared for you. My favorite example is on the very end, so I think you should stay until the very end. I'll try to have this presentation under 30 minutes. Let's hope it works, because sometimes when I start talking about these things, I tend to talk a lot. So very briefly, who am I? I'm Christoph. Not sure if you would say by like looking at my name. So officially, or like, you know, it like in Polish that would be Krzysztof, but Christoph is fine. Chris is fine. Currently leading the CRM team at Get Your Guide for the last 6 months, and before that, for over 5 years, I was with Project A Ventures, which is a venture capital in Berlin, operational venture capital. That's where we met actually with Adrian a couple of years ago. And for all those years, I was actually supporting strategically, but also operationally, portfolio companies of Project A. Here I listed a couple of them, mostly focusing on all the topics related to customer retention. So if you think about the marketing mix, there are people responsible for acquiring new customers, and there are people responsible for keeping your customers happy and building those relationships with them. And I was on that side, taking care also a little bit about offline communication, social media, and so on, but mostly spending my time on projects related to CRM. So today, over the course of like next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to try to explain my point of view on customer retention, and I'm going to try to answer the question, how can companies, instead of focusing on an individual sale, how can companies mindfully and intentionally design the processes and use tactics to create a customer who will hopefully then be a loyal customer, repeating customer, and then how kind of like a holy grail of CRM, so like let's call them brand ambassadors, people who don't only love your product, but they also love talking about your product and sharing it with their networks. So maybe very like, let's say, quick story or observation I have that I wanted to start with. I spent a couple of years working for a venture capital, and I had this thought in the back of my head that I always felt that many companies kind of misuse or misunderstand CRM. And what I mean by that is that, like I've been working for an investor. So I've been working with companies that were actually taking money from an investor to grow faster. And as you could imagine, these companies have generally very ambitious goals, very ambitious targets that are quite often difficult to meet, let's say. And there is this trap in CRM, and I'm sure if there are some CRM managers listening right now, they probably agree with me that CRM is a channel that is relatively easy to boost revenue, or like to generate this short-term revenue, and kind of forgetting a little bit about, like, let's say, the long-term plan or the vision you might have. And this is something I really wanted to start this presentation with, that CRM is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and this is how you should see it. And if you're a CRM manager, I think it's your responsibility, or if you're responsible for retention, it's your responsibility to kind of push this mentality within your organization, that quick wins are generally not better than the long-term vision. And I think that's what we should be focusing on. What is like, I really like this quote, and when I like talk to someone about CRM and so on, I really I kind of tend to come back to this quite often, that if you want to build a relationship with customer, you need to go above being the average, right? Being good currently isn't good enough. There are many companies who kind of follow basic guidelines, and even today, over the course of my talk, some of you might be thinking like, oh, I'm actually doing it. Oh, like, yeah, I'm not doing that well with that bad with CRM because I'm doing that. So I think, like, please keep it in mind throughout this talk, that are you actually doing enough? Like, are you more than just an average? Are what you're doing, are the communication with your customer, is what you're sending to them better in some way than what they're getting from other 50 e-commerce shops that they bought something at least once from, right? So I think if you want to create people who love your product and people who will become your loyal customers, you need to build those. You need to bring some kind of surprise or delight to your customers, and you actually need to intentionally design those things. Yeah, so you really should sit and think about it, and today I'll try to help you with that, and hopefully by the end of this talk you'll have some ideas how you could improve whatever you're doing, or if you actually plan to start doing it, you'll have like maybe a slightly different perspective of the angles of the angle you could take here. So if you want to create fun, if you want to create a loyal customer, I think that really requires a remarkable, and if you want to achieve the remarkable, you need to build some kind of peaks. You need to build some kind of moment of surprise, delight, and so on to your customers. And what I mean by peaks, let's start with one of my favorite examples. Some of you, if you ever listen to me speaking somewhere, you may know this example, but I really like it. I think it makes perfect sense to share it once again. So there was a group of researchers that analyzed the level of satisfaction, or let's say, let's call it a satisfaction throughout the entire day for people visiting Disneyland, right? So in the beginning, people were standing in the line, or they were also standing in line if they want to ride their favorite roller coaster, and that, no one likes waiting in lines, right? Like, people hate it, so of course that gets 1, and the scale here is from 1 to 10. But then at some point you're finally riding the roller coaster. You're there with your kids, you're there with your family. That's a cool experience. That's why you went to Disneyland. So that's generally, at least you don't have you don't get like motion sick or so. That gets 9. And then your kids can take a picture with Mickey Mouse or other Disney characters, and that's a very enjoyable moment. So that gets an average 8. At some point you're hungry, so you say, okay, let's go to get some food, and you might be a little bit surprised when it turns out that the Mickey Mouse pretzel cost, I know, $12 or $15. You will probably agree that it's too much. So lines plus prices of food, they're getting around 2. So, but then you have this like great closing of the day, grande finale, where there is a fireworks show, and the fireworks show, everyone likes it, so it receives 10. If you would actually take all those numbers, all those touch points where people were being measured, and take an average of it, the average would be something around 6. So I think we can agree that it doesn't seem very high, right? Like for a family going to Disneyland, but this is what the average would be from all those moments. However, the same group of people were contacted a couple of days later, and they were asked, how would you rate your experience? What was the overall experience you had in Disneyland? And this gets around 9. So what is the lesson from this is that customers tend to forgive you a lot if you're able to build those peak moments into the customer journey, right? And as I said, you need to intentionally design those moments. Yeah, these are not the moments generally that just happen, but these are the moments that you should be really mindful about. And you may say, hey, okay, but like, they are Disney and I'm just selling compression socks, or I'm just selling pillow sheets or so. Yes, I think there are certain businesses for whom it's easier to do that. It's easier to achieve that than for the others. But I think every single business can actually think of doing something unexpected, like going beyond what customer would expect from you. And I think, since I'm assuming there are a lot of people running the Shopify shops, I'm sure many of you think about, how can I find giants like Amazon and so on. This is exactly how you can find them, because they have a scale that doesn't allow them to delight customers and to do something on top of what customers would expect. And many companies, many smaller shops can actually do that, right? And it could be around communication, but it could also be around like receiving a package, opening it. What is the entire experience of making a purchase in your shop? So why is customer retention so appealing? Is it actually so appealing? I would say probably yes. So there were a lot of studies done around it, and we know right now that 5% increase in customer retention can lead to 25 to 95 increase in profit. Why is that actually the case? The case is because acquiring new customer will cost you around 5 times more than keeping a loyal customer. And I think the better you are in CRM, the higher these numbers will get. And the same is that the probability, the likelihood of customers making a sale is significantly higher, of course, for people who are already in your customer base. Plus, your customers, like people who already had a good experience with your product, are more likely to buy something new from you, are more likely to try new products, are more likely to spend more likely to buy more things in advance, and so on. And what I would also add is these people are more likely to tell others about you. Yeah, so I think this is really important to keep in mind. Amazon. So Amazon in 1999, they had an acquisition cost of $27, plus minus $27, and but the value of first sale was around $17, right? So we don't need to be great mathematicians here to say that if those numbers would stay like this, Amazon wouldn't be where they are today. but Amazon is still an Amazon, and the reason for that is that average sales per customer was around $160, right? And if you look at spending $27 for a customer for whom you get $116 in return, that number already seems right. And then keep in mind that you only have one cost per acquisition. So once you acquire someone once, it's not only the first year, it's not only the second year. It basically, if you're able to build this strong relationship, if you're able to make customer like you and remember about you, you're able to like benefit from this relationship for a couple of years. However, sorry, I'm just checking the time from time to time because as I said, I have a few things to share with you. So is it relevant to every company? So should every company think about customer retention in the same way? And here the quick answer is no. And if you're not sure, if you're a company that for which retention is really important, you can answer a very simple question. Am I profitable on my first order? Am I actually making money on the first order when I keep in mind the cost of buying the traffic and so on? But not only this, because you also have some cost of running the organization, right? You need to pay your salary, you most likely hire someone, you have production cost and so on. So if at the end of the day, you're still profitable on the first purchase, then you most likely don't need the retention that much, or you can look at the retention from slightly different angle. However, there are very little companies who are in this situation. So, I put a couple of examples. You probably buy house not very often, like you don't buy houses regularly, you don't buy mattresses regularly, you don't change your cars very often. So there are some companies who have a business model where they need to do that. But it's also a very risky game because at some point it just becomes a pricing game. If there would be another company that would do mattresses like Casper, and will be like, let's say, comparably good in marketing and reaching people, but they would do it for like 70 or 80% of Casper price, I think the sentiment of people would like shift quite quick. So yeah, but for most of us, for most of the companies, especially for smaller shops, for all the cards that cost under 50 euros, I cannot see it working. So like I can't believe that you might actually be profitable on the first purchase, and that's why I think it's important to think a little bit more about retention and think about how you could foster the customer centricity. So let's talk about a couple of foundations, a couple of things that I try to make. Like I made a long list of things and then I shortened it to 5 things that I think right now are especially important. And I'll walk through them briefly, and then I'm gonna talk about something else. Because yeah, as I said, I had a couple of ideas what to share with you, and I decided to put more things because I hope you'll benefit from them. So first of all, think mobile first. One second. First of all, think mobile first. Currently, the official statistics are that around 46-47% of emails are being opened on mobile, right? If you like filter all the business related emails and so on, I would assume that this number for e-commerce is already closer to something like 60%, which means that majority of your subscribers will open your emails on mobile devices. What is the catch here? The catch is that you guys, like, you most likely use something like MailChimp or this kind of ESPs, and you generally design everything on desktop, you send yourself test emails and so on, and it's very easy to forget to check those emails, how they actually look on mobile, do they make sense, and so on. So I really encourage you to do it, because nowadays it's actually more important that your email looks good on mobile than that it looks good on desktop. And you should really think about having a very good, very clear, big fonts, square pictures, and so on. So like, keep it in mind, and when designing the new templates where you'll be working with email templates, you should actually make sure that it's like a perfectly optimized mobile template. The other thing is, like, this is a trap that many companies are falling into, is try to focus on one call to action per message, right? I know that, like, let's imagine you're a shop that's selling, I know, shoes. Yeah, so you're selling shoes, and then you have the new New Balance model that just came out, and you said, okay, we're going to send the newsletter to people about this new model. But then you say, okay, but the weather is nicer right now. Shouldn't we also put like sleepers and flip-flops somewhere there? And they said, like, yeah, like sounds like a reasonable idea. And then he said, okay, but like last week I was writing this like great article about how to run, or like which are the perfect shoes to run within your, like around your living room during the corona crisis, right? So we should also put it there because I put some time. And then like you might have someone from social media calling you saying like, hey, like we kind of slew down with our growth on social media. Can you please also include our banner to encourage people to follow us on Instagram, right? And you have all these 4 things that kind of make sense. And then you say, okay, if someone is not interested in those New Balance shoes, they'll still have other things they will be able to consume. But I disagree with that, because I think that nowadays you got to be really clear about what you expect from your subscribers. So you got to be really clear about saying, hey, we got new shoes and we want you to check them out. Hey, we have this amazing piece of content and we want you to read it. Hey, we're also on Instagram and we want you to follow us. Like, give people one thing to do and measure if they're doing it or not. That way, it's also going to be very easy for you to judge if you're doing a good job, or if the expectations you had when it comes to like click-through rate, conversion rate, and so on, if they're actually being met. So I always call those newsletters, those emails that have a lot of, let's say, blocks or elements, I call them Christmas tree, which is like, you try to put all kinds of decoration in your email, but does it actually look good? Not always. So if possible, one call to action per message. Go beyond email, right? If you're doing an amazing job, and if people love you, and if you have a great page, you might be lucky to get 50% opt-in rate on your checkout, right? Like you probably don't have it, but like, let's say best case scenario, you have 50%. If you're doing an amazing job with your emails, if your messages are optimized, with great timing, great personalization, great targeting, you maybe have 50% open rate. You don't have it. The industry standards are probably something between like 20 and 25%. So, but even if you would assume 50-50, you can only reach 25% of your customers with those messages, right? And that's not a lot. Of course, that might be people who are really active and engaged, but you want to reach more than 25%, right? So you should think, what are the other channels? Like, many of you will probably won't have an mobile app, right? But you could experiment with browser push. You could like push the audiences to Facebook and try to replicate what you normally do on email on Facebook or on Google Display Network and so on. You can send letters or postcards to people, and like I would encourage you to at least think about it. So really try to think, for my business, how could I reach more people that I reach via email, and how could I make those contacts meaningful? Next thing, collect preferences, right? And I think we are trying to, like, nowadays, this whole trend towards AI, like big data, machine learning, and so on, kind of pushes us to think a little bit more about like trying to predict. So if someone has bought these shoes, they're most likely like in this age range, they are male, they might be living in a city or so and so forth and so on and so on. But I think the better way is to actually ask people. So like give people the reason to share with you some information, but design an experience that actually collects an information that you need, right? So if you're a nutrition shop, like ask people a couple of questions, right? Like ask them either on the website or send them an email with a quick survey after they bought, but really like tell them what is in it for me. So like, how am I going to benefit with sharing this information with you? Because that way you can be so much more relevant and your messages will be more relevant. And that way it's going to be easier for you to build this relationship that I keep coming back to. And last but not least, have a content strategy, right? Like, I know that it's not always very easy, and I know it's really easy to put 2 free products and maybe put like a 10% voucher code into your email and send it, but it's not a sustainable CRM tactic. So really think about what can be the content, like what kind of video content, what kind of written content, what kind of, I know, even social media content can I produce that my customers will benefit from, right? And think about, I can give you an example for Get Your Guide, what we're doing right now. If we have top cities, right? So like top travel destinations where travelers from all over the world go to, and if you book an activity in one of these destinations, you will receive city itinerary. So you will receive, let's say, like a blog article that describe like how to spend perfect 48 hours in this city that we know you'll be traveling to, right? And that goes way beyond only activities, because we also highlight some of the restaurants, bars, cafes, and so on to visit. So we really hope that's one of the ways how we could add value to customers and do something that they wouldn't necessarily expect from a marketplace that's selling travel tickets to travel activities and experiences. So I got 10 more minutes. Okay, so this I will go quickly through it, but I wanted you to think about how I would encourage you to think about your customers and how to segment your customers, because many companies, they segment their customers based on how much they spent or when did they buy for the last time and so on and so forth. I actually think that this is a better way of doing it, and I think if at the end of the day, if you want to take one thing from this call, you could basically take a screenshot right now, and then you could check, do I have 2 messages, do I have 2 emails that I really spend time thinking and designing per one of these life cycle stages. And if at the end of the day you'll have 10 emails targeting each of these 5 stages, I think that would be already a very good start. So I'm just going to go through them very quickly. I didn't include too many slides because I think for this you would basically need like another presentation that could easily go for half an hour or even more. And today I kind of wanted to combine a little bit of inspiration with a little bit of actionable tips. But lead generation and activation, right? So have a lead generation tactic and try to think about what is the way I could relatively cheap collect or generate leads to my page. Why is it so important? Because many people are not ready to buy immediately. Many people need more touch points with you before they make a final decision, right? So you need to think about it. And ideally, you have some kind of evergreen lead generation tactic. Could be lead generation on Instagram, could be Facebook, could be some pop-ups on your page. YouTube is all experimenting with lead gen ads and so on. So there are a lot of things you can potentially do. Second, design an activation experience. So think about how you could activate those leads, right? So what are the possible what are the messages that you could send them to push people towards the first transaction? How you can do that? You could have a sequence of 2-3 messages that welcomes people to kind of your universe, explains a little bit about your product, and then pushes towards activation. What you should remember about is to optimize the time that user have between receiving a first message from you and then booking, because I think some companies have too long, like they put a little bit too much time into this flow, and then most likely you should convert your customer within the first like 7-14 days, because if they agreed, if they gave you this consent, it might be that they're thinking about it. So I would actually recommend to be a little bit more aggressive here, and think about the possible blockers, right? Like talk to your customers, talk to people who already use your product, and ask them, hey, like what made you buy for the first time, right? Because you may hear things from people that maybe it seems too expensive, maybe they're not sure about the quality, and then you can kind of reverse engineer this message and explain the quality, explain the pricing, maybe showcase how the product is being produced, and so on. Sorry, I have to rush. New customers onboarding, right? Don't treat your leads the same as you treat your customers. They are completely different groups. Like people who bought already, they already put some trust into you. So the welcome message should not be so focused on trying to make people to buy more. It should be focused on ensuring the good choice, thanking them for the trust, building trust and kind of giving more context about your brand, right? So I wrote here, don't immediately focus on cross and upselling. And I see too many companies doing it. Like, try to give something before you ask for more, or at least wait for people to receive the product, wait for them to have a good experience with your product, and then try to be a little bit more, let's say, aggressive when it comes to asking for more. Think about as a story. So like share some kind of stories, share stories of people who work in your company, share stories of your best customers and so on. And you can consider writing it in the first person, but I would say that you don't necessarily need to write this, hey, I'm Christoph and I'm a CEO of this company, because like so many companies already sending those emails that it feels like a bit too much. And I think people already losing trust to these kind of things, unless you're really a CEO who's writing this message and so on. And I think then you should really make it as personal as possible, ideally with some kind of story. Next thing, second order push. So it could be blended with new customers onboarding, but it could also come a little bit after, right? It really depends on what is the cadence of using your product, what is the regular expected frequency of how people engage with it. So this is crucial for every e-commerce business, and this is something where you should really invest a lot of time, because every single e-commerce company have the biggest segment of people who bought only once, and moving people to their second booking increases the likelihood of, we're coming back to this slide about why retention is so important and why it's so attractive, right? So it's exactly this. So you should really try to think, what can I do to try to push people to the second order? Because if they buy for the second time, the likelihood of buying for the third time and so on increases drastically. And if that means that you should have some kind of discount or some kind of offer, that might actually be worth it, right? So you could have a control group that doesn't receive it and see how they develop, but that would be a good point to play with some kind of discount. Loyalty. This is something that it's very often forgotten by companies. So I made this, I drew this amazing visualization. As you can see, I'm not a graphic designer, but I work in marketing. So you have, if you think about CRM, you have a lot of things happening in the very beginning. So you have all this activation, onboarding, welcome, second order push. And then you have a lot of things that are happening at the end. So reactivation, dormant campaign, churn prevention campaigns, and so on. But quite often there is very little things that are automated that actually reward your best customers, right? So companies don't focus that much on people who bring them the most money. That doesn't make too much sense, right? If you think about it. So I really think that you should make time and you should think about the ways to either celebrate milestones with your customers, and that could be birthday, anniversaries, like some kind of rounded, let's say, orders and so on, bookings. But you can also, like, this could be the group of people that you notify about new product launches. This could be a group of people that you ask for feedback. You say, hey, I'm thinking about adding this product. Would it be a value of you? And don't remember to reward these people, right? So don't remember to show them that they're actually valuable to you. And the last but not least, reactivation, right? So you will have people who maybe don't check your emails so often. Maybe they don't think actually your company is so important as like we like to think about the companies we work for. These people sometimes need an additional push, right? So sometimes they need to be, let's say, incentivized to come back or reminded to come back. So this is really important. This is kind of like a basic of CRM. So, I would recommend you trying with the first message that is just a reminder that has like maybe highlight some new product, something that like changing in your offering. And then if that doesn't work, thinking about offering an incentive, because it might be that if you wait too long, people will completely forget about you. Okay, so once again, 5 lifecycle stages. If you want to do things right, if you want to start and say like, hey, how do I make sure I have like a proper setup? Like, take a screenshot of it, design 2 messages per each lifecycle stage, and you're going to be good off. So last example and last few thoughts. So it's very easy to look for shortcuts, right? It's very easy to think about like, oh, like I'm going to automate that. Like, yeah, so I'm just going to send this campaign to everyone. I'm not going to like write a special campaign for my best customers because I have so many other things that are happening right now. But you got to remember that like people really see those things. So unforgettable experience, creating those peak peaks, they always come with surprise and effort, and it's really difficult to fake it. Let me give you one example, also one of my favorite examples, not related at all to e-com, but I think you're going to get the point. So there is a hotel in Los Angeles, and as you can imagine, in Los Angeles, there are a lot of hotels, right? And these are like, I literally took these pictures from booking.com. So if you go to Magic Castle Hotel in Los Angeles in booking.com, you're going to find exactly those pictures, but I hope you trust me on that. And there are a couple of pictures, right? So this is how the hotel looks like. I would say if I would be going to Los Angeles, I might be looking for maybe something like different, right? So it doesn't look really fancy, to be honest, but still it's actually like a really popular hotel. And what's the reason for that? The reason for that is that this hotel analyzed what could be the touch point, like what could be, let's say, the touch points, or what could be these moments throughout the day of people who are taking rest in the hotel that would like bring the smile on their face, that would surprise them, that would delight them, and so on. One of these things is they installed the popsicle hotline next to the swimming pool. And how it works is that throughout the day, like anyone could just pick up, like take the phone and order ice cream. And those ice cream will be then delivered by a person dressed quite nicely on a silver tray, and they would be even delivered to the swimming pool, right? Imagine, like, let's come back to what I was just talking about, shortcuts, right? Think about how easy would it be to just put the freezer next to the swimming pool and have ice creams just waiting there, right? You wouldn't need to have this person who is waiting there, like dressed like this, like with white gloves and so on. But would that create an experience that they were able to create here? I don't think so. So TripAdvisor, Popsicle Hotline pretty much sums up the coolest hotel. It's the little touches that mean so much, especially when traveling with kids. Ice cream machine, popsicle hotline by the pool, snacks available everywhere. Such a convenient location when you feel like you live right in the city with customer service that can't be beat. We already love the Magic Castle, and the Magic Castle Hotel is now on our list of favorite places. Thank you to your awesome team. And like, let's just look at these pictures again. And then coming back, exactly what I was telling you before about Disneyland, people tend to forgive us so much when we're able to build those peaks into the customer journey. And one last thing, which is really interesting, because you might be like, okay, how do I know that it's really like that people really love it? It's like one review from 2015, like it might not be. So if you go to booking.com, this is the current rating that this hotel has, right? So they are rated as an excellent hotel, even though I think there might, like, it feels like this hotel already has seen its best days when it comes to the design. So last but not least, leaving you with these last thoughts, and happy to take any questions you have. Please remember that if we're talking about CRM, it's very easy to fall into the trap of using it as a revenue generating channel. But we should really not do that. We should really think that if we believe that we will do a really good job in CRM, additional revenue and next purchases are just a natural consequence of what we're doing. So remember that R in CRM doesn't stand for revenue, but for a relationship. And I think that if you'll be thinking about it while building and designing your flows, your messages, and so on, you'll be on a good way to create a sustainable marketing communication and messaging, and build those strong relationships with your customers. So that would be it. I think I went a little bit over time, but it was plus minus 30 minutes. So happy to take any questions that you have. Also, feel free to take a screenshot if you want. If you're shy to ask a question right now, but you really have something that you want to ask me, feel free to drop me a message on LinkedIn or email, and I'll be happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Amazing, Christoph. Thanks a lot. I would switch now over to the normal cameras again, so we see you full screen basically. Well, and me trying to moderate a little bit of the questions. We already got some questions coming in, so if you have any questions you want to ask to Christoph, now's the time to do it. Please feel free to write it, and we'll try to get all of those questions posed to you, Christoph. First of all, thanks a lot for sharing those insights. it's really cool to see it, and you have a lot of experience already. You've helped already during your time during Project A, where we met each other. A lot of different ventures from a lot of different vehicles. Even though you're now like in the kind of traveling industry, you before also had a lot of different other insights from a lot of different other companies, also online stores and so on. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts also on those questions we got, and we got quite a number of questions. So you talked a lot about those different unexpected surprises, right? Or like this surprises in order to make this wow effect to your customers. So Alexandra asked very in the beginning already when you talked about that. If, for example, unexpected sweets inside the shipping parcel that you sent, if that's enough to create a surprising moment, or what in the case of an online shop would be such a thing?
Yeah, I think very good question. So I also like, you really should think of, like, you shouldn't think about overdoing it, right? So like, you really shouldn't try to invest too much money and so on. Like, it doesn't need to be something expensive. It just needs to be something that, like, really, if you think about, if I would receive it and I wouldn't expect these things to be inside, or if I wouldn't expect this kind of message to come, would I enjoy it? Like, would I be happy about it? Would it bring smile, or would it feel a bit too intrusive, or maybe would it feel too much? So I think like adding something to, and as I said, like, this is something that big companies like Zalando can't do that, right? Amazon can't do that, but like many of you actually can do it. So, you know, you could think about adding like stickers, or writing like a thank you note that is handwritten for all first-time customers, saying, hey, we appreciate like you giving, like, putting the trust in us, and, you know, buying from us for the first time, and we hope it's the beginning of our relationship, right? So what other companies could do is, imagine if you're like more, let's say, in a B2B sphere, or if you're like really selling something that is boring, and you don't want to send, like, say, okay, I could send t-shirts or so, maybe that's a little bit too much. What I saw is that in Germany, one company was sending a 10 euro Rewe Gutschein, and the message was something along the lines with, hey, you know, a lot of good relationship starts over a glass of wine. Unfortunately, we can't have a wine together, but I want you to have wine. So here is like 10 euros to buy a nice wine for yourself and enjoy it with your beloved ones, and so on. So there are like really a couple of those small things that you could think of. And you can also think about, do I need to send it to everyone? Because maybe that's additional effort, or maybe I only wanted to send it who, let's say, the first order was above whatever, right? So you know what this like borderline should be for you.
That's an interesting one. We actually had, like, last week, we had a couple of merchants also talking, and one of them was actually one who came from the offline retail, Maître Philippe. They are like basically based in Berlin. They are having a little store like with French groceries basically, and they also did it this way, that they kind of transferred this vibe, the special care they do, and this expertise they show in their store, also to try to put it into the packaging by adding this personal note and personal thank you. And actually also what they did was, from time to time, when they knew the customers and saw that they purchased quite a lot, and like, for example, cheese, they sometimes gave like this unexpected additional cheese with a note of like, maybe you can try also this one, this might be amazing, which actually resulted to this exact surprising moment, and people really felt really enjoyed it. And at the same time, they really felt, okay, this person thought about it, which resulted in the end actually to, like, a lot of times them calling the customer support and asking for what that cheese was, because they now want to purchase again. So like, actually exactly what you said, like, give value first, and then somehow like this revenue comes afterwards. So like, in the moment you show that like you really care about that person, that this actually is perceived and like recognized. So just as maybe an interesting additional note. All right, cool. We had a lot of we had a couple of other questions. So let's stick to first of all different channels, and then we go deeper into like this email marketing stuff. So there came a couple of questions. Okay, time is limited, resources are limited. What would you recommend if you have only 8 hours a day to spend onto like this customer retention and social media and anything related to it? What would be it? Would it be Instagram content writing? Would it be newsletter? What would you recommend would be the first thing to focus on?
Yeah, so I think be smart about like repurposing what you're doing, and be smart about saying like, if I'm writing this blog article, will it only be a blog article, or will I be able to use it all across different channels, right? And I think if you have limited resources, and I assume that many people who are listening to this, they do have those limited resources because they don't have a huge marketing teams, you really need to be smart about like where you invest your time. I think definitely it makes sense to invest into content, because content could easily be repurposed, right? So you could link to your content in the email. You could like take a quote and put it into the Instagram post, and then just put the link in the bio. You could put like a bigger quote, or like record it on 30 seconds video, summarizing what you wrote about, and put it on Facebook or put it to Instagram stories. And basically from one piece of content that you maybe spent 3 hours creating, you actually covered a lot of different channels. So with limited resources, I would really try to think, how can I make something that I can reuse on different channels, and I can do it kind of in a more, let's say, consistent, systematic way. So definitely, I wouldn't jump on. I would go with like what you feel makes sense, right? If you really see that you're like that people watch your Instagram stories, that there is some kind of engagement, invest a little bit more time into it. If you see people opening your emails, invest a little bit more time into it, and try to do. It's better to do 1-2 things really good, especially when you're a smaller company, than trying to catch like 5 birds, right? Because then probably all of them will fly away.
Yeah, I think that one we talked also like a couple of years ago when we sat down, and the typical thing as a merchant is you want to do everything, and then at some point it's like better to focus on a specific thing. But basically what I take from you is it's not a yes or no question. It's not like, should I do social media, should I do content writing, should I email marketing, but actually think smart about the content creation. And then, as Andrea also put it, content recycling, and basically thinking about how you can use the same thing in different ways to adapt it for the different formats.
Yeah, and I think if you Google something like smart way to repurpose your marketing content, like you're gonna find a lot of like American bloggers or like these marketing gurus that describe it. And actually some of these ideas are really interesting. Like how could you like create one longer video format and then reuse it across all the different social media channels? So if you want to get a little bit smarter about it, I would recommend to also check that.
Okay, awesome. Ahmed actually asked, since we're talking about different channels and things, with chatbots, push notifications, SMS messaging, which channel would you focus more on, and do you have any experience synchronizing those?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, Ahmed. I think synchronizing CRM channels is probably the biggest challenge that like big companies have, right? So if you think of Zalando, if you think of companies like Get Your Guide and so on, like trying to decide on which channel do I want to deliver the message to the user, especially if they have if you have a couple of them, it's a huge thing, right? So we're working right now at Get Your Guide on actually calculating the probability of a user engaging with an individual channel. So all the emails you ever received from us will be counted, and all the emails that you open from us will be counted. That way we'll have a percentage probability of you opening an email. Then every push notification we send to you will be counted, every engagement will be counted, and so on and so forth. Like I assume many of you will not have this, let's say, technical capabilities to go to do that to that extent. So that's why I would really try to focus on things that are, let's say, common sense, right? So start with email, and then think about what are the next channels that I think I have something interesting to say, and I actually have an idea how to say it, right? So push notifications, I don't think many of you have mobile apps. If you do, definitely that's something you should do. But also you should think that there are different types of content that work best in different channels. So, the same message being if you try to deliver a very similar message via email or via push, it would be a different message, right? Because you're so limited in a push notification in what you're saying that it has to be very condensed. It has to be like a short thing. If you have email, you can put visuals, you can add more content and so on and so forth, more context, And that means that way you should also think am I a company who is who has a lot of visuals, who has a lot of content that is being produced, who writes a lot of articles? Then I would try to think about these channels that kind of facilitate those a little bit better. And if you're let's say, still in a phase where you're focusing a little bit more or pushing for conversions, growing and so on, then you don't need that much. So then you could focus on something like SMS or so, which kind of will limit you to some extent, but gives you different possibilities.
And talking about those different things, it would be interesting to see if you have any idea or insights about what is actually right now trending in Germany. Because from what I heard, it's like messenger marketing seemed to be the thing like a year or 2 years ago, and then somehow now nobody's talking about it anymore. Push notifications seem to be the thing right now, a little bit like in the past, and now looking at least to the United States, it's like everybody's talking about SMS messaging and how great the open rates are and everything. So is it also the thing that you expect SMS marketing to be a thing in Germany, or is it like Germans are too afraid, or German speaking or European in general are too afraid of like this, like it's too personal? Because that's like oftentimes the thing, right? Email I'm used to receive newsletters, so I don't feel like offended in my privacy. But like maybe those different channels, my cell phone is a different thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you need to look at it country specific. So I think messenger bots like that is like way bigger of a fuss than it actually is. I think there are very little companies who prove to have like a greatly working strategy for messenger bots. And especially, like I live in Germany for the last 6-7 years, that like this is not a blue country, right? So like Facebook divides the countries between blue countries, which are more messenger, and green countries, which are more WhatsApp. So Germany is definitely a green country. And that way, I think WhatsApp marketing was an extremely interesting thing in the past, right? And there were many companies who are doing a great job on WhatsApp, including, I know, Urlaubspiraten, Daily Deals, and so on. But unfortunately, it's not possible anymore. So you're not able to send like marketing messages via WhatsApp. There is some kind of customer service API right now that works, and I think it will come at some point, but it's not possible. So I would say, like, if you really think, like, I think SMS could be really interesting, because what companies are doing is they're looking for channels which are not that crowded, right? Email is super crowded. It's so difficult to stand out. You kind of like go to WhatsApp because you mostly have your friends, and then you would have like this couple of brands you really like, right? That's why offline communication is so powerful, because it's not crowded at all, right? Like I get on average, I don't know, 1 letter per week. So if something comes to my inbox, and I know H&M regularly sends me things, American Express regularly sends me things, my pizza place actually sends me things, and I like it. So you try to kind of move to the channels that are not that crowded, and SMS is definitely not crowded. But as you said, like if you're not sure if it's not too much, like start really slow. Start with like not pushing anything conversion related. Just try to say, hey, we're going to notify you as soon as we send your package. We're going to notify you as soon as something happens. We'll notify you as soon as we have a new content piece on our website or something like this. Like, so think about what user may really value, design it, and stick to this. And if you see people slowly engaging with it, at some point you could like kind of take the next step and go a little bit deeper, but don't start with anything aggressive, because it can easily fire back, especially in the countries like Germany.
Interesting. So especially the direct mailing is an interesting one, because like at one of the last Shopify meetups last year, actually, Deutsche Post actually presented some numbers on direct mailing, and it's impressive for especially like online shops, how the retention rate, or like the open rate, but like calculated open rate was, and the effect actually on purchase afterwards. So interesting, like definitely to think about the channels that are not that crowded and go for those ones, try it out and try out slowly. All right. We have a couple of other questions. It's some specifically to email marketing. So let's hop on this one. Maybe a question you hear a lot of times, or one of the first ones you always hear. What tool would you recommend for newsletter?
MailChimp.
Yeah,
I would really recommend MailChimp. So, or Klaviyo. So I know that like we had this discussion with Adrian, but MailChimp is being seen as a tool that is basic, but you'd be surprised how much money is being put into making this tool usable and user-friendly and so on. So you could actually do a lot. I think for you guys, since it's like a Shopify event, Klaviyo could be a better choice, because this is a tool that made a very smart decision at some point to shift towards Shopify and to kind of become this go-to Shopify thing and optimize it. I think it was extremely smart, because at that time it was difficult for them to compete really with MailChimp on like regular customers. I think MailChimp at that time was just a better tool, like more user-friendly tool. But right now, since they are really focusing on making your life easier and making the life of people selling on Shopify easier, I think I would probably go for one of these two. And I'm pretty sure you could like try them and so on. Just try to think about, like, depending how you think about your business. If you think about your business that you'll be the one doing it for the next 5 years, it probably doesn't matter like which one you choose. But if you think about the tool that like you want to expand the business, and like next year you want to have 2 people or like at least 1 person who is doing the email marketing for you and so on, you also want to go for a tool that is relatively easy to use, right? That you want to spend hours doing like onboardings or like days, and like it wouldn't be so prompt for any kind of mistakes, that you just have a tool that like with a couple of like, within 1 hour you could design like a nicely looking newsletter and send it to the desired segment.
I'm personally a big fan of Klaviyo, and I told you many times, Christoph. But the thing is, what we recommend always our customers is actually like, if you don't have much time, go for Mailchimp. It's go for the easy solution, and because it's cheaper and it's like it gives all the benefits, and it's perfect. And once you have time to really dedicate time for especially the automation, and that's the point where I really like Klaviyo, then if you have the time, then you can get a lot of money and like value out of it. But if you don't have the time, then don't waste the money on Klaviyo, for example. So that's at least a little bit my point of view.
And the good thing with MailChimp is that you don't sign any contracts with them, right? You could just start paying from 1 month to another. You could switch to another tool. There are a lot of companies that will make your life in MailChimp with MailChimp a little bit easier. So they'll design your templates. They'll help you with like, building segments and so on if you want. So you could kind of like automate a lot of things and have this, like, let's say, more out of the box solutions.
How many newsletters would you recommend per month to send out? That was also a question raised here earlier.
I would say it really depends what kind of business you are, right? Because think about, let's say, so I think it really depends on the frequency or how often you expect people to use your product. So let's take FoodSpring as an example. I think most of you would know FoodSpring. I think they would be pretty safe. Like if I would be like a head of CRM at FoodSpring, I would say, I think we would be safe if we send 2 newsletters per week, right? But at the same time, if I would be a head of CRM at Casper that's sending mattresses and so on, I would say 2 per month is probably max.
Because like the purchase cycle is so small for a mattress, rather than like for a FoodSpring where you regular basis like consume it, and then interesting.
And I think one more thing to add to this, which is really important, like what do you send, right? Like do you send something that user kind of will enjoy getting? Because like if you have a lot of newsletters that focus on content, maybe you have a vlog that you're running, and then every time you post a new video on YouTube, you want to send people a newsletter, but you see that people actually wait for that they click it, that they watch those YouTube videos. Feel free to send a little bit more often. But if you actually want to focus on selling a little bit more, then I would recommend to not to overdo it, because it's very easy to annoy customers. And once someone unsubscribes, you lost them. So it's like I would try to keep this balance. And I would say e-com, if you want to be safe, send once per week, right? Like just to kind of give a general rule, and then decide kind of based on your product and maybe the competitors and so on, how they're doing it, if that should be a little bit more or if it should be a little bit less.
All right. Robin asked, what do you think works better in a monthly content-focused newsletter? Focus on option A, focus on just 1 or 2 topics with a lot of details and longer articles, or B, give a brief overview about 4 or 5 topics with less details and a clickable link if the reader wants to know more about it?
I think, the answer that I don't like giving would be try it, like just test it and see what works. But I would always go for less. Because, like there is so much content on web, like from people and so on. And you should have a good feeling about what your customers should want to receive. Like you should feel like if you're running a shop that is about anything, like you should kind of have a feeling which 2 out of these 5 seems to be the most like interesting, or like that customers tend to like, or like, should like the most, and focus on those, right? And just like give a bit more context, like explain a little bit more, like have a nice introduction that says that, hey, this week I've been thinking about like content, and like we came up with those 2 ideas. We hope you, because I think at that time you also can limit a little bit the number of content pieces that it's needed to be produced, if you really spend a bit more time thinking about like what people can benefit from, adding a bit more context, like adding a bit more story, how you came up with those ideas, really trying to make every message you send a little bit more personal. It really works.
Cool. Last question for tonight. Today. So Gero asked, what's your opinion or insights on newsletter pop-ups? Are they still working nowadays? Are they too aggressive? What's your take on that?
Yeah, very good question. And that's the, let's say, an ever-going fight between product people and marketing people. The marketing people say we want that, and then product people say like, no, it ruins the experience and so on. Long story short, it works. And you could really be smart about it. So I can recommend you the tool called Optimonk. Optimonk. This is a tool which gives you a lot of flexibility in how you want to set it up. So you can set it up only for new visitors. You could exclude certain traffic. So you could say, if people come from Facebook ads or from Google ads, I don't want to ruin the experience. Don't show it to them. Exclude those UTMs, right? You can decide the number of, like maybe it only shows after a couple of clicks. Maybe it only shows after they scroll a certain percentage of the page. Maybe it only shows when they're on the magazine page or on your blog, if you have the blog, and then ask you for, and then kind of recommends additional articles, or like, do you want to be notified when we post more content like this one? So they work, and unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, this is the easiest way to generate leads. If you don't have a good lead generation strategy, I would say have an exit intent pop-up for new visitors, and offer like a 10% discount if you can. I know this is not the most sustainable way, and I know that, like I said, I told you differently, but if you don't want to spend too much money on generating leads, that's the tactic that will bring you some leads, and at least you'll be able to try things, and you could always deactivate it once you like have different ways to do that. I'll type it here.
Yeah, it's Optimonk. For example, Klaviyo also integrates or has a solution for the pop-ups integrated, so they integrate perfectly and do all those segmentation also. That's amazing, and that's why I also like so much Klaviyo, because they have all those tools. Privy is another Shopify app that, at least for exit intent, allows you to do it for free. I think Optimonk costs like, I don't know, €9 or something per month. Yeah, so like the cheap version for starting exit intent pop-up, at least it used to be this way for Shopify shops, is Privy. So it's Privy, I think, or maybe two V's. I'm not sure, but type it and you'll find it. All right, Christoph, a lot of time. I mean, there are a couple of more questions. I have also like a lot of more questions listening to you. I would go through a lot of. I would love to go through a lot of examples and so on. And but you mentioned your contact details. We can find you also on LinkedIn. You're quite active there also, and share some of your ideas and thoughts. So feel free always to visit him there. And some last mentionings, because they always come up in the last or quite frequently in the webinars. So if you missed some of the last talks and you're quite interested in SEO strategies or some other things, you can find those webinars. We recorded them, and you'll find them on our YouTube channel. Just look for Merchant Inspiration. You'll find those past videos here. So feel free to check that out. And if you're generally interested in this like really hands-on content, we can also recommend you to check out our podcast, where we exactly invite people like Christoph or others to talk about deep dives and talk about those topics and really hands-on advice on how to optimize your store. So feel free to check out also Merchant Inspiration podcast. Having said that, next week we'll be up again with like paid ads and how to grow with performance marketing. The presentation slides, that's the last question from Daphne actually. The presentation slides, it's up to you, Christoph. Are you free to like share them, or is there a secret?
I'm happy to share them.
All right, so like we'll upload them afterwards on the speakers page from Christoph, so you can go over Merchant Inspiration Live. You can click on Christoph's profile, and by tomorrow we probably have the slides up there, and you can download them there. Yes. So with that, having said that, feel free to check out also the agenda for the next weeks. We would be happy to receive you here again. And besides that, Christoph, thanks a lot for being here, and have a great weekend, everybody.